Nostalgic type? The guard sneered, dangling Karen Weller's faded photo for the crowd to laugh. Her hands stayed steady, but her eyes burned. Secrets buried deeper than they'd ever know. One wrong move, one hidden emblem, and the checkpoint would unravel a truth that could topple empires. Who is Karen Weller, and what's in that leather case? She's guarding with her life. You're stepping into a world where silence is a weapon and the past never stays buried. Before we dive in, where are you listening from right now? Drop it in the comments. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. At Travis Air Logistics Depot, the morning started before the sun. Karen Weller always parked in the furthest row, far from the flight line, close to the fence line where prairie weeds leaned into the wind. She liked the distance. It gave her just enough time to fold herself back into invisibility. Every morning, she passed the same radar towers, the same concrete barriers, the same retired crew chiefs half nodding at her with thermoses in hand. Her name tag said, Logistics Support Coordinator. Her ID badge matched. No one asked questions. She worked in Building 3, a low annex pressed behind the main hangars, where the only windows looked out on dumpsters and delivery trucks. Her office was fluorescent lit, colorless, humming with printers that spat out inventory reports. Karen liked it that way. Noise on the outside helped drown the noise inside. At 44, she moved with a kind of habitual stillness, shoulders straight, voice low, steps quiet, not cautious, just deliberate. She kept her dark hair pinned into a practical twist, except for one silver streak that curled above her right temple. The new hires assumed it came from stress. They weren't wrong. She never corrected them, because it wasn't the kind of story anyone wanted to hear. Not about the desert ridge in northern Iraq, where lightning struck so close it lit up the sand like bone, where she pulled a wounded radio man through a trench, fire licking the sky behind them, where something exploded, and the shock wave left its signature on her scalp forever. She had stopped trying to explain things like that. Now, she filed compressor manifests. She ate oatmeal soaked in coffee to keep her nerves flat. She stayed late so she wouldn't have to talk to anyone on the way out. Her world had been pared down to detailed serial numbers, clearance tags, packing weights. That was by design. Only 3 things in her life still held any weight: a titanium dog tag that never left her skin, a cedar coin in her wallet, smooth and worn, once exchanged for 30 seconds at a hostage gate in Tunisia, and a thumb-sized leather case tucked into the front pocket of her canvas bag. That morning began like all others, silent, functional, unremarkable, until a ripple in the system knocked her sideways. Building 3's badge scanner failed. A power glitch, nothing major. But it forced all personnel through the West checkpoint, an access point normally reserved for weapons convoys and flight crews. Karen stood in a slow-moving line just as the sun broke over the hangars. It bounced off the asphalt in harsh streaks, catching mirrored sunglasses and steel barricades. The West Gate was known for its egos and its entertainment. A sergeant with mirrored lenses paced the crowd, barking names he didn't bother to learn. Behind the glass, a young private leaned over the conveyor belt with the smug precision of someone who'd never held a real weapon. Karen kept her gaze down, her hands steady on the canvas bag. Her posture said government civilian. Her badge said GS-12 Logistics, nothing more. But the weight in her chest said otherwise. When it was her turn, she placed the bag on the belt without a word. The scanner beeped once a routine. Then the private frowned. Something wasn't routine. "Ma'am," he said, louder than necessary, "you carrying any unauthorized electronics?" She kept her voice level. "No, just tools and personal items. You're welcome to check." She could have ended it there. All it would have taken was one swipe of a dormant badge, one code embedded in the strip that would have vaporized every red flag. But she didn't. She let it play out. The Private Bradford, his name tag red, gestured to the inspection table. His acne glowed red under the LED lights. She followed. He started pulling out items one by one. Travel mug, oatmeal pouch, micro driver set, cotton t-shirt folded in thirds, The cedar coin. He paused at the photo, a black and white snapshot folded into quarters. A woman in uniform. Karen. 10 years and 2 lifetimes ago. He smirked, held it up between 2 fingers. Didn't peg you for the nostalgic type, he muttered, loud enough for the others to hear. Behind him, 2 more guards joined in. One nudged a pack of tampons with the tip of his pen. Guess logistics comes with monthly backups. Huh. They laughed. Clipboard sergeant didn't stop them. Karen didn't flinch. Her eyes tracked the edge of the table. The nearest wall. The exit point. She didn't care about the jokes. She cared about the final pocket. Bradford opened it. Out tumbled the leather case. Black. Soft. Sealed with a faded clasp. He flipped it open. The room changed. It didn't go quiet, it froze. Like the air had suddenly thickened. Like time itself realized what had just been exposed. Inside, stitched in matte thread, was an emblem. A bird with outstretched wings, talons gripping a flame. The insignia of Black Ember. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, its clearance level exceeded everything in this room combined. Clipboard sergeant leaned in. The laugh on his lips evaporated. His sunglasses lowered an inch. "Seal that bag," he said, voice tight. "Don't touch anything else." Bradford blinked. "Sir, you heard me. Back away. Nobody moves." 2 MPs emerged from nowhere. Hands on holsters, theatrics, mostly. But the way their eyes searched Karen said otherwise. She raised her palms slowly, not in surrender, but in control. Her fingertips hovered near her lanyard. One swipe, and this entire farce would be swallowed in black level override. But she waited. The sergeant spoke into his collar mic. Then silence. Then a low rumble outside. An unmarked vehicle screeched to a halt. 2 officers in midnight blue stepped out, shoulders squared, faces blank. They entered without announcing themselves. The taller one scanned the room, then locked eyes with Karen. Not her badge, not the case. Her. "Lieutenant Commander Weller," he said. It wasn't a question. No one else breathed. Karen kept her voice even. "I'm a non-combatant civilian. Paragraph 12C authorizes standard transit without escort." The officer's gaze flicked to the emblem, then back. And paragraph 12C also prohibits visual identifiers linked to classified units. Care to explain why that's in your bag? She exhaled, not defiance, just fatigue, because I was advised to keep it. As a reminder, she didn't say of what. She didn't have to. The officer didn't nod, didn't blink. He simply turned to the guards. "Return her property. Log this as a procedural anomaly. Clear this gate within the hour." They obeyed. Bradford's hands trembled as he repacked the bag. When he reached the emblem, he hesitated. Karen took it herself, slipped it back into its case, zipped the pocket as she slung the strap over her shoulder. No one said sorry. No one dared. But behind her, she felt it. Not respect, not even fear. Something quieter. Recognition. She walked out of the checkpoint and back into silence. But the silence was different now. Charged. Waiting. Heavy. By the time she reached Building 3, a message was already waiting. An envelope, unmarked. Inside, a single line, recall protocol initiated. Report to Hangar 12, 1900 hours. Karen stared at it for a long time, long enough to feel the floor tilt beneath her feet, long enough to know the past had found her, and it wasn't done. Karen didn't cry on the way back to Building 3. She didn't even clench her jaw. The emotion stayed buried right where she trained them to stay, but something inside her shifted. The checkpoint had done more than expose an emblem. It had peeled open a layer she'd spent years sealing shut. At her desk, she tried to resume routine. Freight codes, transit logs, requisition forms. The printer spat out forms with the same rhythm, but the room felt smaller now, like it was watching her. 15 minutes passed before the first call came. No caller ID, no audio, just a static hum, then silence. The second call hit 5 minutes later, same pattern. Then a third, this time accompanied by a blinking notification on her encrypted terminal, an inbox she hadn't used in 12 years. She clicked it once. Inside was a line of text, rendered in an obsolete cipher she remembered instantly. It was the old field code from Operation Clearlight, one of the last missions Black Ember had executed before its files were buried. The message was simple: confirmed presence, protocol stage 2 authorized. She closed the window. Her hands didn't shake, but her pulse was no longer her own. It beat in someone else's rhythm now. That night, she waited until after the base quieted, past the hum of maintenance carts, past the final round of security patrols. At 22:17, a small courier van pulled up near the loading dock. The driver didn't get out. He left the package just inside the access corridor. Unmarked. Slim. He was gone before she reached the door. Karen took it back to her desk. Inside was a flat envelope sealed with wax, the same shade of gray as Black Ember's archived insignia. She peeled it open with a letter opener that had never cut anything important. But tonight, it did. A single card. Matte stock. Embossed code. Recall protocol active. Directive ID Ember 0. Report Hangar 12. Time 1900 hours. No return address. No signature. Karen stared at it as if it might change, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less impossible. But they didn't. She left the envelope on the desk and walked to the far window. The outside world hadn't noticed. The stars were still out. The wind still moved the chain-link fence like nothing had happened. But she had noticed, and it was enough. For the first time in over a decade, she allowed herself to remember the clause. The erasure agreement. Signed in an anonymous bunker in Virginia. She'd sat across from a JAG officer whose face she was never allowed to memorize. He'd slid the form forward, explaining that her operational record would be sealed. Not retired obliterated, her medals, her rank, her missions gone from public systems, her security clearance downgraded, her access revoked. She remembered staring at the paper, the way the ink didn't quite align with the lines. She remembered thinking that the table felt too clean for such a dirty transaction. But she signed, because back then, she thought peace meant erasure. That if she buried it deep enough, it would stop echoing in her dreams. Now, that illusion cracked, and the echo was louder than ever. She walked back to her desk and opened the drawer she hadn't touched in years. Inside was a locked box, small and rusted at the edges. She punched in the 6-digit code. It clicked open. Inside was her old field kit, compressed, minimal, but familiar. Patches, a tactical watch, and the last combat wristband she wore the night Black Ember shut down, still bearing the knot she'd carved with a penknife during her first solo op. Karen pulled the emblem from her bag. Not the one from earlier, that one had been exposed. Compromised. This was the one she'd kept hidden in a side seam, sewn shut with thread only she knew how to unpick. She held it in her palm, its edges worn smooth. A black flame cradled by wings. The real one. She should have thrown it away years ago, but some part of her knew it would never really leave. She pressed it against her chest for a long moment, then set it gently back inside the kit. Not wearing it. Not yet. A message buzzed on her phone. A hospital update from Tucson. Her father's condition had worsened. Oxygen levels low, possibly days. She hovered over the call button. Her thumb didn't move. What would she say? He didn't know the details of what she'd done. He only knew that she'd come back broken and quiet. They hadn't spoken in months. She stared at the phone until the screen went black. Then she turned it face down on the desk. By the time morning light crept into the alley, her decision was made. She packed her things with the same orderliness she applied to every mission briefing. Computer logged out, drawers locked, trash emptied, but not everything was put away. She left her notebook an old moleskin with dog-eared pages on the desk, open to a blank spread, not as a message, just as proof that something had been there. At 17:10, she stood in front of her locker in the auxiliary storage room. The biometric scanner still recognized her palm. That surprised her more than it should have. Inside hung her old flight suit, rolled in a compression bag, stored under her former designation, KUW-117. Karen Elise Weller. The number wasn't a rank, it was an erasure tag. She pulled it out, unrolled it slowly. The fabric still smelled like old dust and adrenaline. It still fit. She dressed in silence. No ceremony. No hesitation. Only breath. She strapped the combat watch to her wrist. Checked the time. 18:46. Time to go. She left the admin wing through the rear service door. No one saw her. No one stopped her. She walked past the dumpsters, past the fence line, toward Hangar 12. Each step stripped away another layer of her civilian shell. The cadence of her gait changed, less passive, more alert. Her eyes began to scan the field automatically, corners, elevations, heat signatures, muscle memory rebooted. As she reached the edge of the tarmac, the wind shifted, not strong, just new, and with it came the faint vibration of engines being prepped in the dark. Hangar 12 loomed ahead, half in shadow, lights low, no insignias, no flags. But she knew it. She'd walked through that door more times than she could count, and every time, she'd walked out someone different. Tonight would be no exception. At 18:59, she stood at the threshold, and just before stepping in, she paused, not out of fear, not out of doubt, but to exhale once deep and clean. She stepped inside. Whatever came next, she would meet it not as a clerk, not as a relic, not even as a survivor, but as what she'd always been, a consequence. At 37,000 feet, silence pressed against the skin of the aircraft. Karen sat alone near the rear bulkhead, eyes closed, breath shallow, gloved hands resting on her thighs. Her gear felt unfamiliar only in the first minute after that. It became her again. The recon jet sliced through the night, its black polymer skin devouring radar and moonlight alike. No call signs, no identifiers. Just an invisible line across airspace that wasn't supposed to exist. Below her, the land shifted ridges, dry riverbeds, abandoned compounds, Afghanistan, or at least the version of it that showed up only on encrypted overlays. The jet banked southeast, nudging her toward coordinates she hadn't seen since Black Ember burned itself into ash. At 0243 local time, she dropped. No ceremony, no countdown, just a soft hiss of the cabin seal and then gravity. She landed like shadow, chute pulling in behind her with a ripple, knees flexed, rifle ready. Dust curled around her ankles in still coils. No wind, no chatter, no movement. The compound lay 300 meters ahead. It looked civilian low mud brick walls, rusted satellite dish, sandbags stacked haphazard. But the geometry was too precise, too wide around the perimeter, too clean for anything unarmed. She circled west, found the heat leak Sasha had marked on the briefing slate, an old power box, cables still warm. She crouched, waited watching for sentries that never appeared. Then she moved. Through a rusted side gate, under a frayed tarp. Her boots whispered across loose rock. She followed the thermal trail deeper inside. The courtyard opened in front of her, and there, in the exact center, stood a black box the size of a field rucksack. No markings, no cables, just a slow vent of heat rising from its core. Beside it stood a figure in matte black tactical gear, unarmed, face exposed. Karen raised her rifle out of reflex until her brain caught up. Sasha Locke. Her voice caught in her own throat. The last time she'd seen Sasha, she was being dragged toward a downed exfil site outside Jalalabad wounded. Presumed KI. That had been 12 years ago. But the woman standing here was alive, different, weathered, eyes sharper than before, and completely calm. You're early, Sasha said, her voice low but unmistakable. Karen didn't lower her weapon. Not yet. I saw your file, she said. You're dead. Sasha's lips twitched, not a smile. Not quite. Reports of my death were convenient. Karen stepped closer, careful, eyes scanning the edges of the courtyard. No other heat signatures. No drone hum. Just the two of them, and that box. You called this in, Karen asked. No, Sasha replied. I responded to the same recall you did. Karen's fingers tightened around her grip. Then who activated it? Sasha turned to the box. They didn't recall us, she said. They baited us. Karen froze. What they needed to know who would come back, who still responded when called, who still remembered what it meant. Karen took a breath, slow and uneven. You're saying this wasn't Black Ember? Sasha looked back at her, expression finally shifting. There is no more Black Ember. Karen, just echoes. And someone is using those echoes to set a trap. Karen's heart thudded once. Hard. The box at their feet hissed again, faint, rhythmic, like breath. What's inside everything? Sasha said. Every mission, every voice recording, every kill order, including one with your name on it. Karen stared at her. They tried to erase you. Karen, you signed the clause, but someone else signed the authorization. To make it literal. Sasha reached into a side pouch and held out a laminated printout, grainy, scanned, an official clearance document. At the bottom, Karen's image. Beside it, a red stamped phrase, Liquidation Directive, KE-117 Priority Alpha, dated March 2010. Karen didn't move, didn't blink. The year matched the IED incident, the blast that should have killed her but didn't. Now it made sense. The mission had failed, but not the enemy's, her own chain of command. She lowered her weapon, hands limp at her sides. Sasha continued. They planted the emblem in your bag, not you. The one that triggered the West Gate. Karen nodded slowly. I checked that bag 100 times and I would have known. Sasha gave a faint nod. They didn't need you to know. They just needed the system to see it. Karen turned toward the box. I thought it was a beacon, but it was more than that. It was a fuse, Sasha said. She gestured toward the black cube. This is the detonation. The box clicked once, then again. A thin blue light pulsed along its edge. Then a projection, no sound, just images, faces, documents, debriefs, a video of a mission in Balochistan, a name, a date, a denied op, a satellite log of an unacknowledged airstrike, Karen's voice in a comms loop, issuing orders, then another feed, another team, then another, dozens, then hundreds. Karen backed away. It's streaming, she asked. Sasha nodded. Global, secure backdoors, embassies, intelligence nodes, everything we ever did broadcasted. Karen's voice was tight. How long has it been running? 14 minutes. Karen did the math in her head. They were already in it. No turning back. No way to sever the signal. This wasn't a leak. It was a controlled detonation of the truth. She stepped closer to the box, felt its heat against her calves. They'll know everything. They already do, Sasha replied. Now they'll have to admit it. Karen turned toward her. This kills us. No, Sasha said. It erases them. The projection shifted again. Now it showed footage from the command floor of Fort Belvoir. A general turning away from a monitor. A redacted signature appearing beneath the word authorization. Karen recognized the timestamp. It was the moment they tried to delete her. She couldn't breathe. Not from shock, from clarity. This was never about revenge. It was about witness. She sank slowly to the stone floor, crossed her legs, hands resting palm up on her knees. Sasha joined her. The box clicked again. Transmission strength increased. Karen didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She just watched and waited and accepted that this exposure was not a failure. It was the only way to survive. The stream went global in under 27 minutes, not through public feeds, not through news cycles, but through encrypted back channels, routed straight into the heart of power. Embassies in Berlin, Canberra, Ankara, consular terminals lit up with looping footage, time-stamped, verified, undeniable, the kind of data you couldn't fake, because the people who received it had once helped create it. In a subterranean control room beneath the Pentagon, an aging general sat stone still. His thumb hovered above the console's mute switch, but he didn't press it. On screen, a clip played in grainy clarity. His own voice echoed through the chamber, authorization granted. Liquidate asset KEW-117. Confirmed, no residual trace. The date was March 2010. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just leaned back and hands folded in his lap as the truth played out. He had signed it. He had ordered her erased. And yet somehow she was still here, still speaking. Across the world, no headlines flared, no protests erupted in front of foreign ministries, no press briefings scrambled to spin the narrative, but silence itself changed tone. Inside intelligence bunkers, junior analysts paused before forwarding reports. Colonels hesitated before issuing live field orders. Clearance stamps were rechecked twice, sometimes 3 times. And in those small gaps, something old started to shift. Not policy, but posture. A kind of quiet recognition had begun to creep in, not of what they had done, but of what they had hidden. Back at Travis Air Logistics Depot, the sun rose exactly as it always did over the edge of the valley, past the satellite towers, across the rows of hangars that never changed shape. But something else was missing. The Westgate checkpoint was gone. No replacement, no memo, just a flat stretch of asphalt where concrete barriers once stood, as if it had never existed. The guards who had laughed 2 days earlier were reassigned to distant posts. Nobody said why. Nobody asked. Inside Building 3, her old desk remained untouched. No one packed her things. No one was told to. The chair still had a slight lean to the right. The keyboard was still warm from the last login. And inside the second drawer, beneath a stack of unused requisition slips, a few items remained. A faded black notebook, a stainless steel spoon, and a narrow metal ring singed along the edge, shaped to fit the inside of a wrist. No one claimed them. No one dared. Karen didn't come back, but neither did she disappear. She moved quietly off base, off grid, through channels only the old ghost still remembered. No badges, no authorization tags, only movement. She walked through towns that didn't ask questions, stayed in motels with paper keys, and for the first time in years, she slept without waking from the dreams. She didn't chase the headlines. She didn't monitor the fallout because she didn't need to. The truth had already done what it came to do. It didn't need applause. It only needed air. And now, finally, it had that. In small corners of government, language started to shift. Operator was no longer followed by deniable. Disavowal became harder to justify. And in a few rare places, even the term remission clause stopped appearing in black ink. But no one dared bring back the name Black Ember. It was too volatile now, not as an active unit, but as memory, because memory, once unsealed, has a way of reshaping everything. In one base outside Norfolk, a junior lieutenant asked why a transport manifest had a dead call sign listed. Her superior told her to delete the inquiry and walk away. But she didn't. She paused. She stared. Then she whispered it just once. Q-117. No one responded, but no one stopped her, either. Elsewhere, a drone lost signal mid-flight over an unlisted corridor in the Horn of Africa. Standard recovery protocol kicked in, except the blackout lasted longer than expected. And when telemetry returned, the screen flashed a familiar insignia. A bird, wings wide, flame in its grip. No action was taken. No report was filed. But in that moment, the operator at the console leaned back and whispered, "They're still watching." Karen never confirmed her survival. No encrypted pings, no coded traces, but a surveillance feed outside a humanitarian checkpoint in a man picked up a blurred silhouette. One night woman, mid-40s, hair pulled back, moving like someone trained not to be seen. In her hand, a cedar coin, worn smooth. The facial scan flagged her at 89% certainty, but the match was deleted before it could be routed. And still, the world spun on. Governments recalibrated. Files were renamed. Chain of command flowcharts got redrawn with gaps where names used to be. But the data remained, mirrored, scattered, replicated on thousands of dark nodes, untraceable, unstoppable. It didn't scream for attention. It just existed. And in that existence, it accused. Karen never looked for vindication. She never expected redemption. All she wanted was the one thing she'd been denied for too long, to not be erased. And now, in some quiet, unreachable server room where archived truths live beside outdated protocols, her name stayed burned into the log. Karen Elise Weller, KEW 117, Black Ember. She was never honored, never mourned, never even named in public. But the people who mattered knew. The ones who had lied, the ones who had watched, the ones who had once believed she was gone. They all knew, because truth, once seen, cannot be unseen, and consequences, once earned, cannot be buried. She was never a ghost. She was the ash left behind, the trace no one could scrub, and the reason silence no longer meant safety.